Oh yeah. That's good. Names I haven't even seen, so that's wonderful. Sometimes it's like, oh, I've seen that name before, but I don't know who that is. But these are names I don't know. That's good. Welcome, Mary Jo. Welcome, Meredith. Michael Caldoun Sturm. Welcome. Tom's at Carolyn Furnace. Okay, yes. Tom, you've been on a call before. And Lawrence J., welcome back. See Paul, welcome. Got some new ones here. Well, that's actually Naomi, not Kevin Dreger.
That's it. Well, maybe now. Kevin?
Hello, Kevin. And Ann Dillon, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
There.
And I think to respect time commitment, should we begin and people can just trickle in?
Love it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Welcome everyone to the community call that we do on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. This is a chance for retreat centers across North America to connect and collaborate on issues that are pressing to us. And those issues obviously are changing rapidly and hopefully slowing down a little. But right now we have centers that are reopening and facing new challenges. And so this is a great time for us to learn from each other. We're all at different phases in that process. Our states, our communities are in different phases. So there's a lot to learn from each other, both those who are in the lead and those who are following up in various places, not in the lead. I'd like to welcome the folks who are new, who haven't been on one of these calls before, and maybe we can do just a quick introduction to say where your center is located and the name of your center. Some of you, I'm not even sure which center you're working with, and that'll be helpful for all of us. When we get into breakout rooms, we'll be meeting each other a little bit more in depth towards the end of the call after we have a chance to hear from Kellen. So can we do, Justine, do we have time to do that, or should we do that in the chat? What are your thoughts?
I think there's enough new people that I'd selfishly love to hear everyone.
Okay.
So I think we have time. And one thing I've really enjoyed about working with Kellen is his flexibility. So let's do that.
Okay, so maybe I'll start. My name is Ben Scott Brandt. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I don't work at a retreat center. So I work just for the RCC, the Retreat Center Collaboration, and I worked as sort of as a hub to connect people and facilitate conversations and connections across the whole network. So if you have a question or you need something, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to facilitate more of that interaction. Popcorn style?
I'm brand new to this. I'm Mary Jo Pollock, Sister Mary Jo. I am at Sacred Heart Monastery in Yankton, South Dakota, the Benedictine Peace Center, but I'm especially here as a co-chair of a group we have of Benedictine retreat centers, kind of a self-help group of that.
I'm Naomi
Hi,
from the Hermitage in Three Rivers, Michigan. I'm the program director there.
Hi, I'm Jean Richardson. I'm a director and a colleague of Justine's, and we're both at Kirkridge in Bangor, Pennsylvania, which is on the very eastern side of Pennsylvania.
I'm Bernard Delcourt. I'm a monk at Holy Cross Monastery, a Benedictine community of Anglican monks, and we operate a guest house of 45 guest rooms, which is closed until January for, as far as we know, for the moment.
I'm Pat Farrell at Sister Pat Farrell, a Dominican at Santa Sabina Center in California. We too are closed at least through January, if not further. We're working on online.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Sabistanoff from Christ the King Passionist Retreat Center located in Citrus Heights, California. That's Northern California.
I'm Jane Marie Kudlotz. I'm at Villa Maria Education Spirituality Center in Villa Maria, PA. And with me is...
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm the new Assistant Executive Director here. I just started last week. And so grateful to be on the call. Looking forward to learning from all of you today.
I'm Ann Dillon. I am at Manresa Jesuit Retreat House, just outside of the city of Detroit. We did a soft opening a week ago, and it's exhausting to do direction work with a mask on.
Hi, I'm Shannon Isaacs. I'm at Pendle Hill. It's a Quaker retreat center located in Philadelphia.
Maureen Connors. I'm on the program committee at Tampa at the Franciscan Center, part of the Allegheny Franciscan Sisters Ministry, and we're still closed, doing Zoom.
I'm Marta Mulholland here on Whidbey Island at the Whidbey Institute. We are closed right now. We're looking at doing a few one-day programs at the end of August and then possible multi-day programs, but we'll just see how it goes.
I'm Emily Durkee. I'm with the Dominican Center at Marywood in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We are offering some virtual Monday gatherings, and we're looking at offering more fall programs over Zoom and whatnot. So I've been with Dominican Center for 12 years.
I am Suda Ferrari. I'm the director of Morningstar Renewal Center in Miami, Florida. We're quickly trying to grab the first place for COVID on the list as Miami continues to climb high. Our center is closed and we're working online.
If there's, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Ben. I'm Janine from the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center in Occidental, California, in Sonoma County. And our retreat or rental on-site activities are closed. We're looking, we're exploring online.
Paul Mock, Lindenwood Retreat and Conference Center in northern Indiana, about 30 minutes south of South Bend. We've actually been open now for 2 months, no issues.
So my name is Lawrence J. I'm the director at Rolling Ridge Retreat and Conference Center in North Andover, Massachusetts. We're about 25 miles north of Boston, just below the New Hampshire state line. We are open. We're getting ready to open for our first group coming in this weekend. We do all of our programming online right now, but we're looking to start bringing guest groups in as we move forward in the coming weeks and coming months.
I'm Meredith Basler. I'm at the Abode of the Message and Interfaith Spiritual and Retreat Center in New Lebanon, New York, which is right on the border with Massachusetts. We're closed.
I'm Michael Caldoun Sturm, and I'm also hailing from the Abode as well. Also, I work there as an assistant director. That would be helpful to know. Thanks for having us.
I'm Sister Bobby Bussin from Rock Island, Illinois, director of Bennett House Retreat Center. We're located right on the Mississippi River, and we've been closed. We're connected to our monastery of sisters, and we share facilities, so we have had to be closed longer and anticipate being closed longer because of that. And we currently actually have a sister who has to be completely isolated because she's teaching, and she's in our retreat center. So, but we've been doing things virtually, and we're planning winter virtual retreats as well.
Well, I'm Brooke. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and work for Holy Wisdom Holy Wisdom Monastery, which has a retreat center, and we did a soft open, I want to say a month and a half ago.
Anybody else that wants to pop in and introduce themselves, where they're from?
Hi, everybody. I'm Margarita from Grand Rapids, Michigan, representing Dominican Center, and we are still in remote form.
Maybe I'll pass it back to you, Justine.
Wonderful. It's nice to see new faces and former colleagues in this space. And I hopefully think that will help Kellen understand the diversity and uniquenesses of all of our spaces. So I'm not going to take up too much time. I just wanted to give a little context to how we came today to talk about digital messaging and storytelling. Ben, Kellen, and I have been working on a project and my own personal journey in understanding how to hold an iPhone to have the best captured photo, to what are specific prompts to give people when we're trying to tell our story. Retreat centers are spaces of amazing stories of transformation, deep growth, inner work, and outer justice. And yet we find it difficult to tell that story to our communities. Maybe that's also funders or people in this network and the people who show up in our spaces, whether it's virtual or in person. So we invited Kellen to share tidbits of wisdom. Since I've already learned so much, I wanted to see if he would be willing to take what he's learned at the Fetzer Institute and share with all of you. So I've invited him, with Ben's blessing, to talk informally with us about his work, his role, what he sees as the greatest learnings through his work at Fetzer, and then also hold space for questions you may have. I didn't receive any ahead of the call today, but I think we're going to have a lot of questions stem from what he kind of prompts us with. After he speaks to us and engages in a question and answer session, then we'll break into small groups and we'll kind of learn from each other as we're all knowers and learners in this space. So with that, Kellen, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Justine. That was way too kind. As she mentioned, I've been working with Justine and Ben on a video collaboration project for these retreat centers. I do want to say, first and foremost, I think the introductions were incredibly beneficial to me to get a better sense of where you all are coming from and your roles and your locations. It's really, really nice for me to virtually meet you all today. I was honored when Justine asked me to be here with you to kind of share some of my knowledge and my experience working at the Fetzer Institute, where I have been for 11 years, 2 years serving as our digital media manager, 8 years prior to that, digital media specialist. Really only one word difference, but I am amazed at how much additional work comes with the word manager. So it's been a great process for me kind of building out my skill sets and my understanding of digital landscapes, storytelling, and things of that nature. I have a background. I'm located in Kalamazoo, Michigan, where the Fetzer Institute is located. With that, you could say we are connected with our Seasons Meeting House, as well as Gilchrist Retreat Center, located in Three Rivers, Michigan. A neighbor I know of the Hermitage, so it's nice to see from there on the call as well. All that said, as I said, my work focuses on digital storytelling. I have backgrounds in both film production and music production, degrees I acquired from Western Michigan University right here in Kalamazoo, somewhere I was planning to be for 4 years and take those degrees and that knowledge to California and pursue a film career. I was quickly sucked into Fetzer Institute world as an intern, and here I am 11 years later. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about myself. I know, how Justine prompted this always. I'm really here. I'd love to keep this as informal as possible. That is my nature. I told Justine I don't do well with prepared speeches. I am much more of an off-the-cuff, kind of roll with the punches type of person. So anything pops up, feel free to shoot a question into the chat box. Much rather this be conversational versus a lecture. So if you can help me out with that, I would get it. Just a couple quick points I wanted to make in this is, when we talk about digital storytelling, specifically, that includes many different facets of the digital landscape, whether that be your website, your social media channels, other media, print opportunities. They all kind of fall under that blanket of the digital media landscape. And then when we talk about storytelling, that can be anything from written content to photography, visual storytelling like video, which my background is more specifically focused in. But there's a wide array of content out there, and that's one of the things I wanted to make sure conversation foremost. And then tied to that, I think one of the biggest components, and elements of digital marketing, storytelling, etc., is authenticity. It's one of the big things we talk about at Fetzer. There is no one size or one piece fits all in terms of what might make the most sense for your retreat center or your organization. That really has to be determined and specified based on your audiences, who you're trying to reach, who you're trying to engage with, whether that's proximity based, or now, as I know a lot of you mentioned, you're doing a lot of Zoom type retreats and things like that. So in that kind of realization, it's always worth considering how you might be able to broaden your horizons in a time when you're not being able to bring people to a specific place to gather for any type of retreat you may be hosting. Again, I've worked a lot at Fetzer in our engagement side. Many of you might know my colleague, Michelle Scheidt, who is kind of the lead on this collaboration. So I recognize some of your faces from in-person seasons meetings, a few more from some of the video collaboration work I've been working on specifically with Ben. But again, it was really nice to have those introductions and get a little taste of who you are and what you do. And again, I just want to be here as someone to kind of answer any questions, provide a bit of insight, but really hope the conversation kind of unfolds naturally as we talk about what digital storytelling means, what it means for your organization, and some of the best practices, so to speak, for going about building engagement in a center, whether it is closed or, Paul, I know you mentioned Lindenwood has kind of reopened. So I want to make sure I'm not speaking just to one area of this. Again, this is very dependent on your organization, what your values, ideals are, and what you want to achieve in this time, either of remote work and or reopening to your communities. So with that, Justine, I think you maybe had a couple questions prepared. I didn't know if you wanted to jump right into that. I'm happy to ramble some in my work, but I think maybe time best served kind of jumping right in.
Well, let's do it then, Kellen. Thank you for that introduction. I had questions, of course, but I want to also open up the space if you have questions and anything in that introduction that piqued your interest, or if there's a problem you're struggling with, maybe Kellen can provide feedback we can learn from, and we can also share tidbits.
Oh, I should probably read the questions then that you sent me, huh, Justine?
You're welcome to, unless anyone else wants to go first. Sue, do you have a question or? Oh, no, you're on the phone. Go ahead. Yeah.
Because, yes. So the first question Justine sent me was just, how do you decide what stories / messages get shared? And I really appreciate that question because it's a very open-ended question. I think one that'll be very different for each and every one of you. I can speak specifically to my work at Fetzer. How we go about our digital campaigns is we kind of look at 3 different tiers, and that's what do we want people to know? What do we want them to feel when they engage with our content? And then what do we want them to do with that knowledge? Is it some action-oriented item? Is it coming to a retreat? Is it supporting, not specifically to Fetzer as we are an operating foundation, but could it be supporting your retreat center with some sort of financial donation, whatever that looks like? So again, those are kind of the 3 tiers we always look at our messages to, like, how does it make people feel? What are they learning from it? And what does it inspire them to do? A lot of that work, I'm not necessarily certain what all of your social media spaces may look like. As we all know, in the last 10 years, that's kind of taken over most other traditional types of media consumption. What we've also seen in this pandemic is that social media engagement and use has gone up specifically. I think the last number I saw was over 250%. So we've seen that at Fetzer as well. Our social media engagement and user numbers are up significantly, while our website usage is actually way down. And that is both a blessing and a curse. Most of our work in the 10 years prior to the pandemic was how do we use our social media to drive people to our website to engage specifically with our programmatic content. Again, Fetzer's Institute is a unique one in that we are an operating foundation, so we are not seeking donations. We operate off an endowment. So really what we want people to take from our messaging and our digital spaces is an understanding of our mission, which is to help build the spiritual foundation for a more loving world. That falls under many, many programmatic areas, which I won't kind of dive too deeply into, but we always make sure we're focusing pretty equally on each of those areas. We do that through uplifting different web pages, through blogs written both by staff at the Institute, as well as collaborators, consultants, partnerships that we have around not only the country, but the globe. So really falls into a couple of different buckets there. Another thing we really focus on, and especially in the time of the pandemic, is what many of you might already know the term evergreen content, but looking at what we've already created in the past, what may have tracked well 2 years ago, but still has relevant messaging today, and how we may reshare and or repurpose that message for today's economy, for today's landscape, for today's lifestyle, knowing that even as we kind of open our doors, we're seeing a bit of hesitancy for people really to jump back in to their world as they knew it, prior to March or whenever, your area may have been first hit by this pandemic. I just want to refresh and look at the chats. I'm seeing some things popping up. Okay, I'm just going to kind of jump into what I'm seeing here, if you don't mind, Justine.
Yeah, I
Natalie
think Margarita had. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Margarita, go ahead, and then I'll kind of answer some of the ones I'm seeing in the chat box.
Mine's in the chat. So many of our retreat centers do not have digital staff. And so, we might have a phone or an iPad. Yeah. And so what can you provide for us, or maybe resources for us to be able to know how do we slowly but surely move into that digital space with the limited tools that we have?
That is a great question, and something I've been experiencing prior to all this. 75% of my work was video production, which I did on your higher end camera rigs, high quality recording gear, a super high quality editing lab. And those things have kind of all been taken away from me during this time. And so we at Fetzer have kind of rebranded what that video strategy looks like in terms of what we're calling a more raw and rugged approach. We've learned through some, essays and blogs written by thought leadership in the field of video production that, in a time such as this, there's a lot more flexibility, there's a lot more leeway, there's a lot more understanding when pieces aren't as polished as maybe they would have been a year ago. You could ask Justine and Ben how we've kind of gone about this preparation, the video element of it. We had researched, and I think Margarita, you had been a part of it as well, just how we are having folks record on their iPhones as they are, and not really putting a ton of attention into the production side of it, but really the post-production side. How we take maybe a raw form of whether photography or video created on an iPhone or an iPad or something similar, and how we're able to, I don't want to say spruce it up, but kind of enliven it enough where it still kind of tells your story in a way that is captivating. A lot of that, we've seen lately is what we'd call short form video, things that are 15 seconds to 2 minutes. We've stepped away from the long 5 to 10 minute mini documentaries. Some of those things really kind of create very short, simplistic stories that speak directly to one certain element of your work. In that, when I mentioned the phrase digital team to Justine, she kind of gave me a wide-eyed stare as what did that mean? And I understand the realization is that many spaces, especially in the nonprofit community, don't really have a team. They maybe have one person whose time is also spent doing a multitude of other things for their organization. So I would tie that back into authenticity. What are the stories you want to tell? What is the messaging that you think would captivate your audience? If you're trying to draw them into a virtual Zoom meeting, let's say, maybe it's just a 15-second raw interview with you, Margarita, kind of discussing the of that retreat, what people might look to take away from it, and how they can get involved. And another thing I would mention is just kind of, you can never belabor the point too much on social media, especially social media. When you realize how algorithms are continually built out to take more and more away from organizations, especially for-profit, but nonprofit as well. realizing any type of message you might put on a social channel may reach 1/10 of your audience at best. So, I mean, oversharing is kind of a thing of the past in that regard. Another thing I would mention is that what they're seeing now and how they're building some of these algorithms is that video messaging is the key. Any written copy still may track well. Built-in components into a lot of these digital space, Twitter, where video already will get a higher amount of engagement through your platform than any other type of traditional content. So I don't know if you wanted me to speak to anything more specific in that regard. There's a lot more leeway currently, especially now, for more of those raw, what you might not think are highly polished or overly produced pieces, but things that kind of catch you where you are at this moment and speak authentically. Again, I'm going to probably use that word 10 more times, authentically to what your organization is and what you want people to take from it.
Thank you.
And then I think Natalie asked a question in the chat box that was very similar. What's the best way to do digital storytelling with a polished product when you're limited on technology? You know, I think my answer would be pretty similar to what I just kind of spoke to in regard to Margarita's question. There is no real wrong way to go about it. One thing I've learned in this role is that in my video background, I've become quite a bit of a perfectionist in my work. And I'm realizing that there is so much flexibility for trial and error. Again, especially in terms of social media, you know, you always want your website and other more firm spaces to be a little more polished and a little more captivating. But social media, you really can't go wrong. If something you think is really great, you put out there, it might not track very well. Something else you think, I just have to put this up there so people are aware of it, and that kind of blows up and becomes this highly engaged with piece. So it's really about trial and error. It's about testing different types of content. In my field of work, we talk a lot about split testing or A/B testing, which is you can look at that a couple of different ways. It's creating a piece of content, trying to push it to 2 different separate audiences and seeing where it sticks better. You know, that's a big way you can kind of learn who's hungry for what in your environment and in your spaces. That's something we do a lot of learning from, is kind of what messages land where, and that's how you then are able to start tailoring content to different channels, whether it be a Facebook, a Twitter, if you have Instagram, your website, things like that, and really finding which channel people are going to for what types of content. So that's something we've done a lot of at Fetzer. And again, we've failed quite a bit. But we've always said, you know, you can't really fail on social media. You can only learn and do better next time. So I think that's a really important component as well. Just making sure you're not hesitant or fearful that something might not resonate with an audience, because you can never really be sure these days what's going to stick and what's not. I'm looking. Tom asked, Tom from Kellen Furnace asked, you know, there seems to be so much video content out there today. What's the best practice for sharing and encouraging people to watch, whether that be YouTube, Facebook, etc.? That's a really good question. You know, I think we've seen that YouTube's rise has been pretty incredible, pretty substantial, but they're saying now more and more, what people are really hungry for are live video feeds. And that's something I didn't really touch on earlier. It's something at Fetzer we do a little bit of, but that's kind of creating those in the moment type of video streams. Again, to some of the other questions that are not as polished or produced. You are seeing what you're seeing as I record it. So that kind of, here's again the word, authentic, adds to the authenticity of the piece, the rawness of the piece. But I think what a lot of people in these spaces are seeing is when you speak to something passionately and in the moment, it resonates more with people because it feels more genuine. It feels more accessible. It feels like you're just another person on another side of a screen or a camera speaking to your heart and what it calls you to say. So I think when I think about what probably resonates the most right now in digital spaces, it is creating Facebook live streams or YouTube live streams. I don't know how many are on Instagram, but Instagram stories, especially the video component, are what is going to get the most engagement from most traditional social media audiences. But again, it also comes with the understanding that your digital audience as a retreat center may be yearning or looking for something a little different. There may be something that you've done really well in person for so long that people are missing. And how do you maybe recreate that in a digital space? I know a lot of you are doing Zoom again and different types of these virtual meetings. What does it look like to promote something that you can't all be physically together for? So again, I don't have the answer specifically for each of your organizations. I wish I did. I'd probably be doing a lot better in my career if I had that awareness and understanding. But I think it's important, again, last time I used it, I promise, I said 10 more, just one more time. Really important that you're being authentic to who your organization is and what you've built yourself on, what those values are, what your mission is, who you've seen your audience is, while also being mindful that the wider you build your digital content bubble, the more people are going to start to fall into that. And I don't know what growth looks like right now in a time of a pandemic for a retreat center, but there's always opportunity, especially as some of you are still in the virtual landscape. You know, we've seen it a lot at Fetzer. We're able to reach so many more people because there's not an accessibility issue due to proximity. You know, anyone can engage with our content, with our message, with our mission, simply by logging onto a computer or a Zoom call or a social media channel, et cetera, et cetera. All right, there's a bunch of questions. I really appreciate this. I'm going to try to limit my talking on each one, but again, if you have follow-ups or if I didn't speak to something addressed or speak to something specifically,
Just feel free.
I see that Maureen asked a question around, you know, what are best practices for offering Zoom retreats or workshops, length, ways to energize, other tips. That's a really good question. One that I will just quite honestly say, I don't know how directly I can speak to in my work. Again, that could be trial and error, offering different types of content for different lengths of time. What we've seen at Gilchrist, which is the Fetzer-owned retreat center in Three Rivers, is we have been closed up until this point. And as we roll out our next phase of opening, we've decided to only offer week-long retreats. We realize that there's a deep hunger and an urge for people to get into any type of retreat space, whether that be an hour, a day, or a month, you know, beyond. But we've seen that right now, the best thing we could offer folks is those who are about this work, this deep inner work, this spiritual side of their life, and offer them a space with enough time to not only be able to kind of live into it, but experience and ride that emotion and that feeling and the things that all the benefits that come with this type of work and offering these spaces. You know, some of that you immediately are going to lose in a Zoom call or something virtual. So obviously, I don't think I would offer a week-long Zoom retreat. Maybe it's an hour a day over 5 days, kind of diversifying your content for each of those meetings. But again, I look at it as trial and error. When you think about energizing your audiences, it kind of all ties back to what the reflection of your values is in that. What are you hoping they walk away from? And if you're on the front side of that, really speaking to what you're going to offer in this retreat, those who are looking and yearning for that are going to see it and they're going to want to engage with it. Another thing we've seen is just offering things at different times, you know, realizing that so many people are working remotely right now. There are opportunities for people to join day retreats where they maybe would otherwise be at their job. But also being mindful that, you know, some people right now might need a night retreat or a weekend retreat, and ways to just kind of provide spaces that are flexible enough to kind of find people where they are and when they have the capacity within themselves to really do some of that deeper inner work. I hope that speaks to your question a little bit, Maureen. Again, I don't want to claim to be an expert on Zoom retreats. It's not the bread and butter of my work. It is something that we're leaning into at Fetzer as we've closed our, not just Gilchrist, but our Seasons Meeting House through the end of the year. So much of our work at Fetzer for so long was these in-person collaborations. I know, again, I've seen many of you at the retreat center collaboration meeting we held there, what could have been 3 months ago or could have been 2 years ago. Time has kind of become a vortex as of late. But, you know, that is kind of what our work was for so long, is bringing people together. And now we're kind of falling into that same trap of how do we do that in a way when we can't physical connection through a screen, even like what we're all trying to do here right now. You know, I would love if I could be sitting in a room with all of you kind of doing this. It would feel much more generative on my end, especially as my internet lags a little bit and I feel like you're engaged and you're smiling, and I hope that's the case. And if you could for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. If not, I would really appreciate that as well. But I should probably move on because more questions have come in. Bernard asked, great question. Can you say more about what might be oversharing? Is that length of unique messages or frequency? It can be a little of both, definitely. What we found in the social media world is the more succinct your content or your copy is, let's say, how you frame up an image or a video, the shorter that is, the more likely people are going to read it and read it fully. And we see the same thing with video. As I said at the beginning of the call, why we've pivoted to short form communication is we're seeing a huge drop off in our videos that are over 2 minutes at the 30, 40-second mark. People are engaging with it to a point, and in the landscape we've created digitally, people's attention spans have become so reduced. 30, 40 seconds maybe, all someone feels they have the time to engage with a specific thing before they have to engage with X amount of other things before their, digital time is over. So I think it's a little bit of both. I don't want to say that longer form pieces are not important, because that's absolutely untrue. But when we're talking specifically about engaging with people online, the shorter message you can create, the more likely people will see it through. And when you're talking about some of the work you're doing, and especially from a retreat center side, if you have a message, you don't want your thesis statement to be buried at the end where people might not get it. So it's also about repetition. As I said, sharing things multiple times. If you have the thought of, there's 4 things I really want to address right now, let's make a video, as I've kind of discussed with Ben and Justine, maybe that's 4 separate shorter form videos that speak specifically to each kind of element or theme you've lifted up. That way, those who really want to engage with 1 or 2 of those elements can do so fully, versus kind of maybe cherry picking from a longer form video. I've kind of gotten what I need or what I was hoping for, and moving on. The hardest thing for me as a video production, person is seeing that someone's watched 2% of a video I've created, because that hurts my feelings. And so how do we pivot and tailor that content so people want to see it through? What do I recommend for platforms for putting out a video message? All of them, I guess, would be an answer. I'm going to try to keep these answers shorter. I promised you that. I'd say all of them, and what we do at Fetzer is we might create a 1-minute video for Facebook, and then find maybe there's 15, 20 seconds of that video that might not be relevant to some of our audiences on Twitter. So we'll shorten it, or we'll make the same video in 3 different ways. So I highly recommend putting, especially video content, out on your channels. It might be framing it differently in your write-up. Again, the copy you use to frame it may be a little different for each of those audiences. But I wouldn't be hesitant to put the same piece of content across your channels. If you can embed it in a website, that's great. Again, a lot of our work in the past was how do we get people to go from a social media channel to a website. And then when you get them to a website, your hope is that you can engage them in more of your programmatic work, more of the specifics, the more detail oriented, the more high level things that you're really trying to share as an organization, and keep social media, I don't want to say light and fluffy, but keep it much more conversational, much more low impact, I guess would be a good way of putting it. Don't put all the heavy stuff there. You want to create a space where people can quickly engage with the core message. And then if they want more, then how do you pivot them to another area where they can really get all the detail? I mean, look at it as, an essay versus a white paper. What is the core content that you have? And then, okay, people are interested. Those who are really interested will go and find another place. So creating different tiers of that same content for different audiences. Natalie asked a great question. If possible, please share some basic tips on what not to do. That's such a good question. I don't know how to answer it. Because as I said, trial and error is great, especially in social spaces. The to fail and to learn from it has been a huge part of my growth in this field. I can't tell you how many times I've thought something has been amazing and maybe 2 people have liked it, or, it's been shared 1 time. And again, I'm a pretty emotional guy, so that always kind of breaks me down a little, but then I like to think, okay, well, what went wrong? Why didn't this resonate? Was it the way in which I wrote about it? Was it the way I built out the storyline? Maybe I take that same storyline and I rework it front to back, and I, again, create that same content in a different storyline and see. And sometimes it's just timing. You know, they do a lot of research about when your audiences are online. I found that a lot of that is helpful when you think about when, you know, in terms of specific times you share your content, whether it's Wednesday morning or Saturday evening. You know, a lot of that is there for you. But again, a lot of that is people finding it at the right time. And as soon as someone engages and likes your content, they're creating in these algorithms the opportunity for more people in their network to find it, whether they share it to their audiences, whether they comment on something you post, and then now all of a sudden that kind of widens its spread. I don't know if any of you are familiar with like bump theory. What a lot of organizations did in the past is they'd simply comment, you know, like or bump in a comment, and that bumps that comment back up with it. There must be something in that content that speaks to, because the end game for these social media channels is getting more and more people on it, looking at more and more content. The more things you look at on social media, the better that is there for their revenue. So again, you know, I don't like to talk about these things that are so great for our awareness and our engagement as revenue streams, but at the end of the day, that is really what they are from the platform side of it. So if people are engaging with your content, that for them is a money generating kind of element, and they want to do everything in their power to kind of keep that momentum rolling, because that's only good for their bottom line. It doesn't really speak to what not to do. I mean, I think in the regard to retreat centers, I mean, I wouldn't ever slam another retreat center. I probably wouldn't use a ton of curse words or things like that. I don't think that's probably what many of you are doing. But again, there's not a whole lot of opportunity. You have some examples of what you might be afraid of doing wrong. I'd love to see them. I don't know why my mind immediately went to those two examples, but they did. Before I jump into more questions, because again, this is great. I was really hoping that this could be exactly this, that the questions would roll in. Justine, I know that you had other plans for this morning as well, so I want to know if there's...
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes left for this.
15 minutes, 7 more questions as of now. Okay, yeah, we could do that. We could do this. We feel that we are engaging our base through our social media channels and have seen both our postings and our audience grow during this season we are in. That's amazing. The question is, how do we go from getting likes or to actually getting the person to share their contact info with us so that we can engage them more for our programs as well as potential donors? That is a great question. You know, in my line of work, that's what we call the funnel. You know, how do we get them at the very small end of a funnel to kind of be aware of us? And then how do we broaden that out to all the different things? Again, we want them to feel about our organization that then creates the actionable steps of what we get them to do. A lot of that is, you know, balance. I'd say a lot of it initially is balance. What we've seen at Fetzer is a lot of these inspirational quotes we'll share with nice imagery, which have no real correlation or direct tie to our work, are the things that engage people the most. You know, it might be, you know, it's the Dalai Lama's birthday. Here's this really poignant thing he said, the really nice image of him. That might get 500 likes. That same day, we might share a programmatic event that we did with the Dalai Lama that gets 10 likes. So it's about kind of creating multiple steps to how they might engage with a specific event or theme or item. The more you can diversify your content in that regard, the more likely is you're going to please everybody in your audience. The more you please people in your audience, the more you're going to show up on their radar. The more you show up on their radar and start adding elements that drive, again, back to your website or a donation page, or here's a retreat that we're offering that I think would be really great for X, Y, or Z. The more you kind of find ways to consistently engage with folks in ways that aren't tied to donations or fundraising or actual in-person or online collaboration or community events, the more you stay on their radar. So we've seen at Fetzer, I mean, our audience has grown tenfold since we've just said, hey, you know, once a day, we're going to share a really nice quote that fits around our mission. And our mission, again, is very broad. So there's a lot of opportunity there. But then that kind of opens up that engagement from our audience, which then opens it up to their audiences. And the more we do that, the more we see people continually connecting with our site, with our content. Then we see when we share on our social media page a link to our website, whether it's a blog about a program, whether it's let's use, for example, the Retreat Center collaboration. the more we kind of talk around those things in very general or very easy to digest ways, the more then people are going to say, well, this is the thing they were referencing, you know, a week ago. Oh, there's something actually clickable here. There's a link I can follow. There's a way I can go from Facebook to their website and really dive in deeper to that content. So that's just, again, I don't want to spend too much time on any specific question because there's a lot of good ones. But I would say the best way to go about that is making sure you're diversifying your content. Make sure you're not only posting about your events. Make sure you're not only posting about this fundraising campaign or your donation link or any of that. It's that you're kind of opening it up as a space where there are multiple tiers of content for people to kind of be with. And once they kind of get into that flow and see that, oh, this retreat center, every Monday they share this quote that's just fantastic and inspires me, they're going to want to dive further and further into your mission, your values, and hopefully right now, and I know some of you again are open, but they're going to maybe want to really be like, this is something I need to know more about. They're offering this 1 hour mini retreat on this topic. I need to be a part of this. Or they're opening up in November. I have to go see what this place is about. These people really speak to me. So that's a very short answer to a much bigger question. But my baseline for that would be just making sure you're diversifying what you're saying. You're sharing some very light, easy to digest things on top of that deeper dive, getting people to a Zoom meeting or a facility or a space that you're providing. I took too long for that question. I apologize. Let's see. Yeah, this is Mary's agents are going on an alternative to use a landing page where people might go for registration information. The short answer, which I promise I will try to keep short this time, is yes. You know, if you're talking about your website specifically, I mean, your homepage is always going to kind of be your go-to. But when you're talking about how you might share different pages on social media, I create multiple layers. You know, we've seen it in like how we talk about Gilchrist. The Gilchrist section of the Fetzer.org website is one of the most trafficked. And it's partly because of that, because there's 10 or 11 pages about it. You know, we could have crammed all that into one page, but again, it's more how we talk about long form video. The more content you have on one specific page or one single page, the more it feels like a job for someone to go through it. So if you're able to offer very specifically multiple levels to whatever it is you might want to be using as a landing page, you know, you could still have your drill down link or your donation link or your click here for this virtual or in-person event. You can bury that in each of those pages, but if each of those pages is talking about something much more specifically, there's a higher likelihood people are going to go find that one thing they're looking for. And then in that, they're still going to see that same link or whatever that information is that you want them to see. You can bury that in every page, but if every page is shorter and much more specific content-wise, there's a much higher chance that someone's going to, one, read through it, and two, click through to that next level, whether it be registering for an event, whether it be donating to your institution or your organization, or what have you. I haven't talked this long in a while. I forgot how it is to be social, so this has been really nice just to talk at end. Does anyone need like a 2-second break from me? Just want to raise your hand. I kind of do. Justine, how am I doing?
We don't need a break. We need more time probably, but so we still have about 10 minutes for questions. I know, which it makes me feel like this is a part two, given all of the questions that are emerging in the chat. I'm just stealing a moment, but your 2-second break to express gratitude to you, Kellen. You've been answering so quickly and so you've been so informative. So we have. Let's shoot for 8 more minutes with you. I also want to let people know that Kellen will have to sign off when we join the small groups because he has so much information to share with other constituents as well. And we'll say thank you to you in 8 minutes. I'll tap you on your shoulder. Okay, Kellen?
Okay, great. That sounds like a perfect plan. Again, I just am really excited about this, so I hope it's not coming out as too rapid fire or too heavy or specific or, you know, jargony, because I enjoy this work. You know, my work forever was strictly video creation, and that was my passion. And I've seen how that unfolds into a much bigger goal in terms of I work with Fetzer, which is really getting people to dive into the stories, to engage with them in different ways. So again, if I'm speaking too quickly or too high level, that's just because I have a passion for it. I hope, if nothing else, that sticks, as well as the word authenticity, which I'll use just that one more time. Shannon asked, is there a good free video editing software you would recommend? Yes. There are some great apps, whether you have an iPhone, whether you have a Samsung, whether you have a Galaxy, or Samsung is a Galaxy, or a Google phone or a Pixel. There are some great resources. I have always kind of tended towards more of the pay into services. If you're looking for something, if you have an iPhone, I mean, iMovie is pretty standard as, the best in terms of pay into. I do think there is an organization called Black Magic Design, which I do believe has released a freeware version of their editing suite. They are fantastic. I have not used the free version, so I can't speak to it. But I would just be weary if you are searching like in an app store for a free editing software, that you really don't just look into the description. I mean, look into the comments, the user comments. That's where you'll really find a lot of the realities of what that product may offer. They're going to speak to it like it's the best thing ever and it's free, so you should definitely be using it. There are a lot of glitches in those. There are a lot of, I don't want to say spam, but there is a lot of inauthenticity in some of those applications. If you have an iPhone, I'd recommend iMovie. There are so many great iMovie tutorials through their app as well as on YouTube. And create something pretty special after maybe spending an hour or two just kind of going through some of those tutorials. Again, I kind of have a background in video editing. That was kind of how I spent my entire undergrad program. So I mean, I could lift off some more of the pay into ones. I've used Final Cut for most of my career, and then they kind of switched some things up and I moved into Adobe Premiere. Adobe does offer their Premiere suite as a monthly, on a monthly rate, so you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on an application. You could maybe buy into it if you had the resources there for a month, see if you liked it. I would recommend, if you do that, I'd watch some tutorials on the front end before you're buying into your month subscription, just so that way you're able to dive right in and you're not really wasting any of your cost or your time learning it, that you already have some of the bare bones knowledge about it. Again, I don't know. I'm sure that there are relative applications for Samsung and or Google phones. I know the majority of folks probably do have iPhones, but I'm sure that Samsung probably offers just built into its phone some sort of free editing software. I can't speak to it, but if it's their built-in application, I would probably go with what's already on your phone, knowing that these have been a little more tried and tested versus something else that maybe just hit the market and is someone trying to suck you into some bigger kind of scheme. So again, I didn't speak too much of that, but I'd go with what's on your phone if you're kind of doing this from your phone. If you're a Mac user, they give you iMovie right on your Mac. If you're a PC user, I think I can't remember what it's called, but they also offer a free editing software as well. And I think if you're kind of doing minimal enough video work, as we talked about at the beginning, more of this raw form, short form especially, what they've kind of built in and tailored for you already is probably your best bet. That would be my thoughts there.
Great, Kellen. How about one more question?
Oh man, do you see one that you want me to speak to, Justine? I'm seeing 5 more.
Can you make that all one question and just speak to no?
I could try.
Whatever. How about whatever you would like to leave us with?
Sure. I like all the other ones. So if I didn't pick yours and yours is the last one here, maybe Justine, if it makes sense to you, I'm more than willing for you to share my email contact with everybody on this chat. If you had any follow-ups from this, or if I didn't speak to your question directly, I'm more than happy to answer it through email or try to answer it through email. If you didn't like this and you want to tell me why you didn't like it, I'd love that too. Because again, if I failed, I just want to learn from it and make sure I do better next time. Oh man, there's some really good questions here. I'm gonna answer 2, but I'll be very quick. Maybe, I don't know. Do you have some tips on how to pick the right story? I think that's a great question, and engaging ways to tell it. That is such a big question, but such a great question, because I think that gets to the essence of what we're really talking about here, especially as we talk about video content specifically. I always go with a gut feeling. I mean, what inspires you? You know your organization better than most. So if there's something that your organization is doing that you think is amazing, I mean, and my hope is that all the things you do, you feel are amazing. But if there's something really specifically that speaks to you, I would go with that first. I mean, that if you're passionate about it, that's only going to show through more into your work than anything else. That you're like, we're doing this and we need to, but you know, there's these other things I might want to focus my attention to. I always try to speak from the heart. I mean, if it's important to you and you can talk about it as such, it's going to be important to other people. It's going to find the other people who it is important to as well. Engaging ways to tell it. I mean, it's pretty similar answer. I mean, how would you talk about it to a friend? Especially when we talk about social media, you've created this video and you're just telling a friend, like, I did this and this. I mean, think about how you would explain that in 3 or 4 sentences. And that's how I would share it. As you can see, there are certain elements of these questions that I get really amped up about, and others that I want to just be very direct and informative. Those are all different layers of engagement, but what matters to you when you talk about it is going to matter to other people more. The more passionate you are, the more people are going to be captivated by it. So that would be my short answer. Again, that's a lot deeper of a question that we could spend an hour on, but you know, I'd start with passion, and it has to be yours, because it can't be anyone else's until it's yours. The other question I liked was, what was a video that you produced that you're most proud of? That's a really good question. This has nothing to do with Fetzer, and I'll quickly end here, Justine, just one more minute. But in college, some friends and I were kind of sitting around randomly one day on April Fool's Day, as I think we're all familiar, and we decided that we were going to come up with Tom Hanks Day. We all know kind of the actor Tom Hanks. We decided that we were going to trick all of our friends into believing that it was Tom Hanks Day. And so we spent that whole day doing it. We have now been doing that for 17 years. Tom Hanks found out about us our 4th year. He has been supporting us for our last 14 years. He sends us items that we raffle off at our annual charity auction. In that, we actually had the opportunity to meet him back in 2013. He did a show on Broadway. We were invited to be his guests. And through some of the content we created from meeting him and doing this work, we've created a couple informative videos about Tom Hanks Day that, one, have tracked really well, because Tom Hanks is something a lot of people search for. So that's another thing just to be worth mentioning. You know, think about what your keywords are, what you think people are searching for online. The more you build those into your content, the more likely people will find it. But with a guy like Tom Hanks, we were able to just kind of put this video out there, and it kind of snowballed on us and became this huge thing. And, you know, we have an active online following, I think of like 15,000 people. We've raised over $150,000 for his charity just through this goofy thing that we did in college 17 years ago. So again, that kind of ties back into the passion. If you're passionate about it, it's going to resonate. If you can bring some levity to it, some lightheartedness to it. I know a lot of your work maybe doesn't call for that, but maybe just look for those areas of opportunity. Look for all the different ways you can connect with someone. Ours was something silly. Again, when I talk about something we thought would fail immediately, turned into probably one of the biggest things people look at me in my career is doing, is starting this day out of nothing. So, you know, if you can find your Tom Hanks Day through your organization, that's what I would inspire and try to encourage you to do. And you can only do that if you're kind of excited about it too. That feels like a good stopping point for me. I just really, really appreciate this time and all of your attention. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun for me. I hope it hasn't been too much for you.
Kellen, it's been wonderful. I see a lot of heads nodding, a lot of thumbs up. We're so appreciative. If you can get Tom Hanks here in one of these calls, or maybe promo for Tom Hanks and retreat centers, you know, just like see if you can work that in. That'd be wonderful for us, I think.
You know, I'm willing to do what I can. Absolutely. For you all, absolutely.
But truly, Kellen, thank you so much. As the note taker, I took about 4 pages of notes. So you just had a wealth of information, and for those who are new to the call, we have this recording and notes that we put on our blog, which we share after this. But again, Kellen, thank you so much. I also shared Kellen's contact information in the chat, and it will be in the notes as well. So thank you. That was such a positive story to leave on as well, especially when digital storytelling can feel quite overwhelming. What are the stories that inspire you? So as we move into our next portion of the community call into small groups, we're going to gather in about groups of 5 and ask those questions. What is your story to tell in your role at the retreat center? What is the story of the retreat center you're at that you want to share? What's been inspiring you? And whatever you want to talk about from what Kellen just shared, from your questions or from his responses. I'm going to put a couple questions into the chat that we can go into the breakout rooms with. We'll have about 20 minutes to share, and then we'll come back, close out with what were the seeds from the small groups that you want to share back to the larger group. Ben, am I forgetting anything?
No, I think that's good. If there are other folks who would rather not go into a small breakout room, you can just stay with me in the center and we can figure out what you want to do next. But I have some groups created with 4 or 5 people in each group, and I can send you off now and I'll bring you back in about 20 minutes. Thank you again, Kellen, for your time. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you all. And feel free, as I said, I don't share that email lightly. If you have follow-up or questions, please reach out to me, but it's been really great to get to know some of you. And I look forward to hearing from those of you who kind of want more. So thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Kellen.
All right, bye everybody.
All right, here come your rooms. Through space and time.
Hi, Ben.
Hello, welcome back.
We're back.
Safe and sound.
Yep.
Right, so that looks like everyone is back into this larger space. I just like to imagine we all came back from breakout rooms and we're walking or making our way into a larger meeting room again if we were together in one of our retreat spaces. We have a couple minutes for anyone to share back to the larger group a takeaway or a learning that you had in your breakout room, and we'll just kind of let this flow. I'll be the timekeeper for the next 6 minutes. So we just invite you into the space to share something.
I can share, especially since this is my first time joining the group, and I just have to say thank you so much, because this is essentially what I was looking for back in March and just didn't even realize it existed. I have another local retreat center who had mentioned it to me, so thank you so much.
I'd just like to say that I appreciated this too this time. I've not been able to stay all the time, but I appreciated the concrete nature. I mean, it really gave some good ideas, some things to work with. So I really appreciated the feedback that we had this morning from Kellen.
I just have a general question for everyone that may be already doing some online retreats. What generally is a person willing to pay to register for an online retreat? You know, the number that sticks in my head is $15 to $20 a person, right? And it's really hard to do a concrete financial analysis of what it really means to somebody and what the value is. So I don't know if I'm even close to, one of the things that we thought about doing is we have a theme of 20 for 20 this year, because it's 2020, $20, in 2020, $20 a month helps make this program continue through generations. So I don't know, that was one of the things we were thinking about. Sign up for 20 for 20 and you can participate in all our retreats for free for the rest of the year or whatever. I don't know. Thank you for the responses. This is great.
I see Sister Bobby there.
I really, this is the first time I've been at the RCC gathering, and I'm really thrilled to be a part of it. And I'm pretty proud. Ben will understand this. 2 other Benedictine centers that I shared the information about are represented too. So
thank you,
I'm glad
Bobby.
I could help our growth, you know, because I think this is great. And today's talk on digital media was right what I needed, because that's right, we're going to be closed for an extended period of time, and so we're really buckling down into what are some good things to do. And the small group, I had Yolanda and Natalie and Eunice, but then had some good suggestions of how to take what they're already doing and put it online. You don't have to completely recreate the wheel. And so anyway, it's all very helpful and I appreciate it. I can answer Tom's question a little bit. That 15 to 20 is really what I look at, doing a 2-hour online virtual program. And then that's basic. That'll come back to the retreat center. And then I add on whatever the cost of the speaker is, because you still have to pay presenters. Right. You just have to pay them travel. Right. But some of the people doing retreats for me, I pay their Zoom, because otherwise I didn't really need a Zoom account, but I don't want to have to go to every retreat. So if it's a presenter that's usually doing things for us, I pay their monthly Zoom. So, and for some of them, that's enough. But for any bigger names, I have to pay them the same that if they were here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that came up in our session that I'm going to follow up on was, as far as telling our story, that those of us who have lovely grounds or at our retreat centers, that people are missing being here. And so that how can we share this space virtually? So somebody suggested doing a Facebook, like what do you miss about being at the retreat center, and what was your favorite place at the retreat center, or something like that, to get something interactive going as a way of our story and they're sharing their stories.
I will just interrupt, Eunice. We have a gazebo on our campus. Of course, we're closed, but now we're taking reservations for the gazebo because it's outside and they can do a 6. So some are doing spiritual direction in a gazebo. Some families are meeting there, but and one group, a book study group that used to meet at our center, asked if they could use a gazebo. So we said, yes, you can use it, wear your mask and not have more than 6. So they were delighted and went out to greet them. And it was so exciting to see people back on campus, not in our buildings, but at least on the grounds. So they were grateful for that.
This is Colleen from Sisters of Mercy Retreat Center in Auburn, California. We're trying to honor the value of the presenters and the work they continue to put in even when they're not on site. What we're doing is charging the tuition we would have for any day or weekend retreat, and asking if people could pay the full tuition, we will be able to continue our ministry into the future. And then we go down from there. Then we offer the next one would be like a commuter rate if it's an extended retreat. We hope that people can do that, and then we just say that we can spread out scholarship over the rest. I'd love us to be conscious about the value of what we're offering. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm finding it even more complex to organize and time consuming to do virtual things than it is to just offer them online. So we're just really trying to uphold the value of the preparation time and the facilitators, and so that's working out pretty well. Some people can pay more. There was a participant who covered all scholarship for one program that we did. It was a little under $1,000, and he paid us that. So we're just trying to keep the value, like I say, and honor our facilitators.
Thank you everyone for sharing. I want to be mindful of the time, and I think it speaks to the need to talk about diversifying revenue, talking about online programming, and how that connects to our values and inclusion and access to our spaces, places, and programs. So I'm afraid I have to cut the conversation short, but as Ben said, as we opened up, there will be community calls every second and fourth Tuesday, and that is actually one of the upcoming conversations. One next time, August 11th, will be on reimagining our spaces, and we will definitely be having a conversation about online programming. And then after that, we'll be talking about diversifying revenue and options about programming. So just thank you all so much for being with us. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you are new to this space, Ben and I are available to continue these conversations. It was lovely to see so many people attend, and clearly there's a need for storytelling here. And this will just be the first step in the journey of digital storytelling, or a continued step in that. And we'll continue this conversation as part of our thread through our community calls. Thank you all so much, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, goodbye everyone. I'm going to pop off to my next meeting.